Good afternoon, everyone. So, welcome to More Than Housing, this new round table. So let's go further on the brief presentations, and let's jump as fast as we can for actually the presentations. So I'm really glad to be here and to present this table. With me we have one architect, one designer, one artist, and one cultural programmer. And it's really interesting, and I'm really happy to see how they will talk about design to availability and breathing walls. So just to say, and really briefly, that Barbara Busser, she will share her presentation with Novo Novo, so with Inês Soares and Lourenço Scodeler. And Barbara, her work focuses on sustainable construction to reduction the waste of the waste and the CO2 emissions. And it's interesting that they will share the presentation she will share the presentation with this Novo Novo group team that will present their project that is really focused on, it's a platform that facilitates the access to materials and how we can reuse for a specific context, and they will talk a little bit about that together. So design to availability. And then we go further to Carlos Bonga, and he will talk a little bit about how not only to encourage viewers to rethink their experience of space and architecture, but also evokes the fragile nature of urban structures. So thank you all to be here, and we'll start with you two, three, with Barbara.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thanks for the invitation, first of all, and thanks for the possibility to invite further young colleagues of ours, which is the next generation, and they will have to deal with what the soup we have cooked. They will have to eat it. So I named my presentation Design to Availability. I'm deeply convinced that architects have to change. The whole construction industry has to change, and we have to go more for what is available, what is possible, than just start thinking on the green lawn, a building which is made from glass or from steel or from any new material, which has to be mined first in all countries of the world and then be brought to us. After my studies at ETH Zurich, my first assignment was to go to southern Sudan and build water wells, shallow hand-dug wells. My next big work was to build up a maintenance department at the University of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. And I'm telling you this because it is very important for my career, and everything I'm doing has its raízes, its roots in my work in Africa. When I came back to Switzerland, I was just shocked about our waste mentality, about our mentality to just use things once and then throw it away, and to live in a luxury which I didn't imagine anymore coming from Africa. And I looked for ways on how to avoid this waste in the construction industry, because that's my profession. And there was a new thing which had not been there before, and this was the internet. So I developed a program together with some friends on how we could offer things which somebody didn't want anymore to other people who were looking exactly for that. Because I had made the experience that I had job to do and to throw away an old kitchen. And on the other side, I knew that a friend of mine needed a kitchen. So I started to exchange these things, but then I thought it had to be at a bigger scale. As you see, this was almost 30 years ago. We started to dismantle, to take away intact building material from demolition sites. It was not economically viable, and we could only do it because we occupied jobless people, and they were paid by the insurance so that we didn't have to pay them. And with this construction, with this combination of jobless people, useless material, they became also better strengthened in their self-esteem, because they saw, we can clean these elements and we can sell them again. So also for them, it was very important. We still have 60 people employed at this Bauteilbörse Basel, and they are gaining new confidence in themselves. Since then, I have been creating various companies together with Eric Honecker, and all have the same philosophy, which I want to show you in 2 pictures. You see an old elevator in one of these developments, old factories, which we transformed. And there was a question, it had to be renewed, replaced. There were about 10 tenants served by this elevator, so we went there and asked them, do you really need this elevator? Because it costs 150,000 francs in Switzerland to put a new one, which means about 50 francs per month for each tenant. And this was the answer of the tenants. They were really happy not to pay less rent, and they were totally happy to walk up the stairs. So for me, this is, in a nutshell, the explanation of sustainability. It's economic, because we don't spend the money, so they don't have to pay rent on money which is not spent. It's ecological, because we produce less waste, and we don't need resources to make a new elevator. And it's social, because the tenants profit, not only the owner of the building. If the owner of the building was the only one to profit, then the tenants wouldn't have accepted, I'm absolutely sure. And in addition, they get the benefit of fitness when they walk up the stairs. We worked in all these companies. We have about 100 employees at the moment. But in 2014, we reached a sort of a turning point. We did develop a big industrial area, 50,000 square meters for Switzerland. This is quite big. And the last house, which was not transformed yet, we decided together with the owner, which is a pension scheme in Basel, we decided to try and make the whole building new out of used elements. And for the whole office, and for myself, and I think also for the whole scene of reuse, this was an important building to show that it's possible, that it doesn't cost more than a new building with new construction elements, and how we wanted to calculate how much CO2 do we really save. This is the building, how it was presented on this Lagerplatz in Winterthur. It's a simple building with 12-centimeter brick walls and some rusty steel. We knew that we can build 3 more floors on top, but we also knew that these old walls would not support 3 more building stories. So we tried to make a first sketch on to see what are we looking for if we want to build this house with used elements. It was, for example, electrical fittings, stairs, radiators, balustrades, ceiling elements, then the whole structural elements, windows, that one, and whatever material to cover the facade, and some more structure. We knew this, and we asked the owner of the building, we need 1 year time to find the elements to build your house, and we need 10% of the cost in advance. And that was 500,000 francs, 500,000, which they had to give us and to trust us that we would use them well. And because otherwise we couldn't have saved the elements. When we saw something going by bicycle through the town, we saw windows being on the street, carried to the street. We needed transport, we needed manpower to bring them to an intermediate storage place. We needed to pay for a storage place, and all this money we had to take, or we were allowed to take from this special account. Lucky enough, we were on our own site dismantling an iron structure, steel structure, so we could already save them. It was easy to coordinate because it was our own construction site. We only needed big tools and a lot of strength of men who were working on the site. And of course it costed more than if you just cut it off and bring it to the ship in Basel, which brings it to Holland, and there they are melting the steel into new products. We stored these products, we tested them, is it still okay? They were absolutely rust-free, and the engineer said, okay, go for it. On the other side of the street, they were demolishing the same houses as we were conserving, and these were windows, aluminum frames, 2 glasses, and we said we want this absolutely because we want to keep the atmosphere of this factory. Our hunters for construction elements, that's how we call them, Bauteiljäger, they discovered this building in Zurich, about 15 kilometers from Winterthur. It was only 28 years old, and they already demolished it because it was out of fashion. This rose granite plates from Brazil, they were not really fashionable anymore. They couldn't rent the offices. We agreed with the owner that we can take out whatever we want, but when I came to the site, the responsible said, yeah, but now we still have tenants in. They will leave 31st of March, and we start demolition on the 1st of April. So I say, okay, what can we do? And I asked him, do you start in the north or in the south? Then I didn't know what he's going to say. He said north, so I said, okay, then I'm starting in the south. And that's how he couldn't say anything anymore, since the owner had agreed before. So we took away windows which had been placed there only 4 years before. It were not the original 20 years old windows, but it were 4-year-old windows with 3 glazed insulation glass, and we could only take the first row because otherwise we would have needed cranes and heavy equipment to take these windows down, and the 1 row was enough for what we needed. We cleaned them and we prepared them and stored them in another intermediate storage, ready for to be mounted again. The same building had an emergency staircase made from metal, and we found a little name of the manufacturer there. We called him. He still existed 20 years later, and he was so happy that we asked him to dismantle this staircase instead of demolishing it, that he also helped us to rebuild it afterwards. And he's really happy that his work, which he had done, which he had invented 30 years ago, is not just put to the rubbish. In another industry, we found these beautiful red metal sheets. In the background, you see the isolation. This is glass wool, and glass wool will be one of the future problems for human beings with these short fibers. So we left the glass wool to the owners, and we just took the iron sheets. We then started to think about the color. Do we really want this orange color? what would it mean to change, to paint it new? So we made a small research, and the cost of these panels, if we use them like this, is 45 francs per square meter. If you use new ones, it's 55. So the economy is not very much, but there is still an economy. But then if you want to paint them new, it would be 90 Swiss francs. So either it's red or nothing. And we were lucky because it fitted very well into this industrial environment. From another construction site, we got radiators. There were over 100, but they were all of the same size. So how can that work? I'll show you later how we solved the problem, because the sizes didn't fit, of course. So after 1 year, we had all the materials which we needed, and we started to make a plan and to propose it to the government authorities. We had windows, we had this granite, we even had the rose one from Brazil, we had the steel structure, we had this whole staircase, we had even some styrofoam insulation for the roof, which was almost all right. We just had to cut it a little bit. I would never buy new styrofoam, but when it's there, you give it a second life. You save all the CO2 which is in there. We had these windows with the metal panels and the other bigger windows. Lucky enough, the authorities agreed. They also agreed to this color, so we didn't have to paint it new. The owners had put 2 conditions before they gave their okay for this unusual construction. They said, 1, it cannot be more expensive than a new construction with new elements. And 2nd, you have to really accompany the whole process by a scientific body. Lucky enough, there is an architectural school on the same area, and we asked them to accompany it, and the result was presented in a book. I'll show you this later. And the restriction on costs made it that our ambition was to build the whole thing 100% from reused material. This wasn't possible because of that cost limit. We ended up with 70%, because you can imagine, for example, electrical cables. To pull them out from a tracé, it's very expensive work-wise, and which electrician would take the responsibility to use them again? So we forgot about electric cables. We did the same in another construction, but in this construction we couldn't go to the end of the 100%. But this is also a learning. Don't try to do the last percentage. It will cost you a lot of money and time. Just do what is lying around and what is so-called logic. Don't change colors, because that costs a lot of money. Just accept it or go further to look for another one. This is the plan which we finally presented. The original building has a trapeze shape. This part we had renovated already. It's not part of the project. And the steel construction we had was a square. So what shall we do? Shall we really cut the steel beams, or shall we just use it as they are? And we decided to use it to make the floor plan a bit bigger from the 4th floor onwards, which the owners were happy because they got a few square meters more to rent afterwards. This is how the construction looks. We have our red metal panels. Then we have the 3 glazed aluminum windows, 4 years old. We constructed a wooden frame out of old timber, and we filled it with straw because we didn't want these yellow fibers. From the inside, that's how it looks. We have the straw again. We found doors, inner doors. All the materials which are used inside a house are relatively easy to find. Switzerland is still producing 17 million tons of construction waste every year. Can you imagine? I can't imagine what it means, but when you look around in the streets, it's obvious that there's everywhere things are thrown away, and that's without any concrete or so. Then we cut our granite plates and we turned it around so that it didn't look so shiny and that you don't, how do you say, you need a certain factor that you don't slip. So just turning it around made it okay. When we got the construction permit, we started to build up. We had decided that we use these thin brick walls just as an outer cladding. We were absolutely clear that we cannot put 3 stories on top of these small walls. So we put actually the whole new building inside of these walls because we couldn't also get bigger because of roads around. The borders were very clear. But keeping this outer structure has helped a lot for the CO2 reduction. We built up the 3 floors, and we had prepared a little bit these beams, these steel beams, in order to hold structure. We call it eine verlorene Schalung. It's instead of wood, you put these metal sheets. Here they are. It's a roof, it has been a roof, but then it was left. So it is a lost cladding. And then we had to fill out some of the steel beams with concrete for fire reasons. But we left a little hole so that we could later on, if in any case in some tens of years we would have to demolish it or dismantle it, we could have access to the screws. And then we filled the whole floor with 8 centimeters of concrete. We wanted to use clay, but by then the legislation wasn't yet as far that we could do that, and we didn't have time. We ran out of time. Now we are making some floors with terra, and we are grinding them like terrazzo, and it's a beautiful floor, but by then we didn't have this possibility yet. So this accounts for the part which we could not reuse. We had prefabricated the walls with the windows and straw inside, and when they were mounted, we rendered everything with clay again. Would have been nice as well, like this, but we needed the rendering for fire reasons. When we started to mount the metal panels outside, we realized another problem. The profile was not exactly the same with all the panels. We had not realized when we took them down because they were sorted out, and then there were some pallets here and some pallets there. So we had to find another way on how to join. So we couldn't join them as normal, and we joined them like this so that it doesn't matter. And nobody has ever realized, because it's in the 3rd floor, and from the bottom you don't see it. So this is also designed to availability. That's the finished off wall with the clay rendering, and this is how we solved the problem with the radiators, because the engineer said we need more than one, and we didn't want to go in the back, so we put one on top of the other. I'm sure it doesn't need 2 because it's well insulated, but the engineers are always right. We also found some floor material, some flooring. We just took it from the other side and nailed it onto our structure. And we did not even polish it or wax it or anything. The tenants could decide if they wanted some more work done on it, then they had to pay for it, but no one wanted to have a smoother surface. They were all happy with that, because 3 years later it would have been that way anyway. And here you can see what we did with these industrial windows, which did not fulfill the laws. We just doubled it. So you see on the shadow, you see that there are 2 windows of 2 glasses. So we have a 4 glazed window, and this is perfect. We had no problem with all the tests and the calculations. And since the windows are free of charge, it doesn't matter. You can take 1 or 2 or 5 or 6. And this was just over the street where we had to collect them. We were always asked about guarantees, and we had 3 strategies. First of all, we put aside a little bit of money in case one window would not be replaceable also. Then we told the client, please keep 10 windows in a separate place, so in case one window breaks, you always have a replacement. And the third strategy was, in case it was only, for example, the opening thing, or the, how do you call it, charnier, where you fit the window on the frame, we could print it in 3D. It costs a lot of money, but if it's only one item which you have to print, it doesn't matter. So this was our answer to all these questions of guarantee. And of course they are important, but you also have to see what is the risk. And most of the cases, the risk is not so big. The windows, these ones, they are 4 years old. They have proved that they are okay. And the others, which are older, we made all this, we took some more, as I said. So that's how the building looks like now. You see the protruding nose, which is due to the availability. You see these lines, which is also due to the availability of these metal panels. You see the red color, which fits perfectly with the brick wall. So it's a mixture of design and adapting to what you have. And I think this is very important for the next generation of architects. You don't have a free choice anymore, most probably, because not all the materials which we are used to can be delivered. And there's also delays in the delivering time, so you must have an alternative choice. And I'm deeply convinced that if we want to survive on this planet, we have to change our attitude. We have so many constructions, especially in Switzerland, Germany. Here, maybe a bit less, but every demolition is really bad because we are spoiling the embodied energy which is in these materials. And it also means that when you do a new construction, you have to do it in a way that you can separate it without destroying it. So the biggest problem is concrete, in situ concrete. If you do prefabricated concrete, you can always reuse it, but in situ concrete, it costs a lot of money still to cut it and to size and to think about how you can use these pieces afterwards. We got even a global gold award for this building from the Holcim, from the cement industry, which was a bit ironic. And of course, we got a prize from the steel industry. And this helped us to think about what is next. And we realized that if only we are doing these things, if this building is the most advanced 2 years ago in the world, we are nowhere in the architecture and the construction industry. We have not done only a little step towards sustainability. And we realized also that architects do not like to be advised by architects, and that's why we founded a new company, which is called Circular, and they are engineers and planners, and we help the architects to do their job better or differently, and we are not interested to get their projects, but we are advising and helping them. And due to this demand of the owner of the house, we published a book with the help of this prize, which contains all the findings, all the experiments we made, and because we want it to be public, we want people to do it again. It was first published in German, but now it's even available in English, and we call it a sort of a Bible for reuse. My conclusions after this construction and all the following discussion with architects, with colleagues, with friends, and there are three. First of all, it's not easy to reuse construction elements. Therefore, it's much better not to demolish. And Lacaton Vassal, they say exactly the same. We have discussed with them and with all others. The easiest way to save energy is not to demolish a building. Then there is a German guy, Daniel Fuhrhopp. He goes even further, and he says, ban the construction of new buildings. Unfortunately, his book is not translated into English yet, but I hope it will soon be. And I'll show you at least the cover, so in case you find it, it's really worth reading. And then the third conclusion is close the circles. That's why we founded this new agency. So Lacaton Vassal, don't demolish any building. Daniel Fuhrhopp, ban construction of new buildings. It's a pamphlet against speculation, demolition, and consumption of land. He says that all the countries in Europe have had this housing problem we were speaking about yesterday, and new construction has never solved it. We are always in the back. We always need more than what we can produce. So don't demolish and think of other ways on how to use your buildings better. And my two colleagues who are doing this circular economy with this new company, Kerstin and Andreas. So if you have any question about reuse, you can ask them. I'm running out of time, because now I want to come to how can we help, assist the construction with new elements. I told you that in '95 I've already founded Bauteilbörse Basel, and I'm going to rush through a few pictures now. Then there have been many other Bauteilbörse in Switzerland. 6 of them remain. There was a very important exhibition about grey energy, matière grise, from the office Encore Heureux. And we have renovated our platform for reuse elements. It's called now Use Again. I also made a tour all around Europe, and we have many, in each country, I found colleagues who are working on the same lines. In Belgium, it's called Rotor Deconstruction. In Denmark, it's Leendauger Group. In the Netherlands, Superuse Studio. You might have heard one or the other name. In Austria, it's Materialnomaden. In France, they are call themselves Encore Heureux. We are still happy. In the UK, we have Studio Assemble. And we also have in situ, architectural salvage. You might be able to copy all these links up later. It's distributed, isn't it? That's why I put them here. And we even have in Poland, we have a group of people, Okno, do-it-yourself. They are also trying to save material from demolition. Germany is there, Ukraine is there, and even Portugal. There is also a European program to facilitate the reuse of materials in construction and renovation. And you see all these markers, and you see that Switzerland is completely empty because we are not even a member of the European Union. And Portugal, unfortunately, is also empty still. We are also meeting. We met in Basel, we met in Vienna, and we are meeting in Copenhagen all people, the people who are working in this field of reuse. And we hope, we were 12 in the first meeting, we were 30 in the second meeting, and I hope we'll be at least 60 in the third meeting in Copenhagen next year. So anybody who is interested, please write to me. It will be a very rich exchange of experiences. Here in Portugal, what I'm telling has always been here. I met this old man, Antonio dos Santos. He built this house out of old construction elements which he collected in Lisbon. I don't have time to explain everything. You know, it's your culture. There's a lot of elements which you can salvage and you can use again. Doors made out of wood, made out of metal. Toilets, beautiful marble. Other floor tiles. And that's his armazém in Coimbra at the moment. But his son has become an architect. He's not continuing the business. Since 2020, universities start to research and to do development and to teach. The University of Liechtenstein was the first. They made a chair called Reuse and Upcycling. ETH Zurich followed, some other high schools as well. And the Ordem dos Arquitetos in Portugal, they invited me to come to the Azores to also present this building. I have had invitations from Iceland, Sweden, Denmark, France. I think it has really now begun. Something new is coming to the construction industry. And we are trying from the ETH to present all these examples in the Library of Reuse, which is mainly an internet platform as well, but you can order each book on demand. And if you want to see more, there's a film being shown on the 25th of October about Herzog de Meuron trying to get to net zero and comparing it to the K118. And I don't tell you who wins. You can see it from here in Portugal. And now that's the moment. I would like to hand over to my colleagues, and I want to present you this heavy Bible together with a heavy cross.
Hello, everyone. So first of all, thank you for inviting us, and thank you to Barbara, Luis, and Teresa for inviting us here. I think we have listened to very interesting talks, and when we first get to know Barbara, it was because she got in contact with us by email almost 1 year ago, and she wrote us a very sweet email telling us that she was working on recovered materials since the 90s, and she wanted first to do it in Portugal, and then she ended up to do it in Switzerland. So she was very happy to know that there was someone trying to do this task here. And I after had the opportunity to go to meet Barbara personally in Switzerland, and I have to tell you that the work that she's done is amazing, is incredible and very inspiring. Also because she works along other partners, she's always willing to find other people that she thinks they will be interested in working in a similar field and similar paths, and I think that this is an example as she invited us here. We are Novo Novo. We are an organization that we work with secondary materials. We like to call them this way because we don't like to call them waste, because we feel they are material with, and actually are material with so much potential of reuse. So we basically facilitate the usage of this material. We make the bridge between companies, especially manufacturing companies, and professional private architects, designers then are willing to work with more sustainable materials and also more original materials. And we call secondary materials materials that retain the necessary qualities for reuse in new contexts, namely production surpluses, unused leftover, unsold stock, materials with defect of production, and so on. But how did we start that? So basically, more or less three years ago, I had this idea on trying to create a new path for potentially reusable materials. I'm a product designer, so I was working with some colleagues of mine on a design project that was an upcycling products, and we had the opportunity to find companies that have materials that we're not using. So since then, I had this idea in my mind on how to scale this experience and try to transform it into more systemic one. After that, I did a program, an incubation program, and then after I met Ines, that she had a similar idea in doing her master degree, and so we joined forces in trying to build up this idea into reality. So at first, we get to know other projects in Europe that was doing the same, for example, Rotor, and there are many more, as Barbara has shown. And so we wanted to try to do the same on the construction field here in Portugal. But the context is a little bit different. I had the possibility to experience the difference between Switzerland and Portugal, and especially demolition works a little bit different here. It's a little bit more a mess, let's say. So you have a very old building, especially to be demolished. There is obviously possibility to recover this material, as Barbara has shown. There are a lot of old buildings that have been demolished from the inside. Especially, there is a big practice of fachadism in Lisbon, as you might know. But still, there are many materials that can be recovered, as wood beams, sometimes bricks, when we talk about old industries, for example, stone masonry, and the list goes on. Tiles, if possible, if they would be removed properly, stone as well. So we have seen, we saw a lot of possibilities, but then talking with other projects that was trying to do the same at the time, talking with a construction company, we understood that was a very hard task because the material needed to be stored somewhere, and we didn't have a warehouse. The material needed to be refurbished, they needed to be put on condition again to be reused, and the material needed to also be tested and sold again. So we start, and if it was possible to get the materials on condition, because sometimes demolition companies and they didn't want to know about that. They want to do it fast, and the cost for putting materials in the landfill in Portugal is still, it's a bit higher at the moment, but it still is very small. there are other companies, there are construction companies that are doing this at the moment, but it's still very niche, especially at that time. So we started looking other ways, and we started looking at industries. And so we started trying to understand, okay, obviously there is a vast amount of materials that is not used and is left over from the industry process. We need to understand better the system to try to understand where to act and where to get the opportunity to work. And so we started looking at the process, at the extraction industry, or industry that then transform these materials to make it available for design or architecture. And so we started focus on manufacturing company especially. So what we did, we basically went there, talked with them, and trying to understand their issues. We understand the type of secondary materials that were available, as I say, cut-offs, defective material, unsold stock, surplus of production. So there were many opportunities, and we understood that a great advantage on working with this manufacturing company is that they will keep this material on their location, their facilities, because they have space, so they can store these materials. It's a cost for them to throw them away, but because they already have paid this material for do something, and it's a cost also to throw it away. So they want to keep that material as much as possible. Sometimes we found companies that keep materials for years because they have a lot of space, and they start storing these materials. And at one point, when they don't have any space left, they throw it away. So we went to these companies, and okay, we had to select a point to start. So we decided to select 3 types of manufacturing companies. So we decided to start with wood, stone, and textile. Both because there are sectors in which we found opportunities, that there were materials to be recovered with good qualities, as much as we thought it was the materials that would have a good range of usability, both in design, interior design, and architecture. So we went to this company trying to understand their issues. And what we understood, going to carpentry manufacturers and Happels, it's hard to say this word, but basically companies that make, let's say, sofas and this kind of stuff that have unsold stock of textiles. We understood that they had a lot of these materials, but they were not very organized. So what we had to do basically it was to try to understand how to organize these materials, because it's materials that is not standard. Obviously, we found also other opportunities in there. For example, they sometimes have other type of materials that they use just for specific projects, so more unique materials, for example, cork or deck floor, as well as polyurethane and many more. We have a big focus on manufacturing companies that work with stone. One, because we think it's a material that with very large possibilities, and as much as because there is a huge problem in Portugal of sustainability about stone. So basically, about 90% of what is extracted in the industry is not used. So the 10% is used and the 90%. There are many reasons because of that. I'm not gonna go in deep if you want to ask me later. But we so decided to, okay, let's start from a point. Let's start from what they do and try to understand what is left from what they do. So we make an analysis about the type of secondary materials, let's call them leftovers from the work that they typically do. For example, from a block of stone, they have to cut the edges that are unformed. So let's say the dorsal edges, they call it costaneiros in Portugal, to make a perfect cube and then to slice it in different different marble stripes. And this is actually a material that is very interesting to be used, because have one very flat side and a very unformed side. And actually it was something that architects were using in the past, but they're not using that much anymore. So, and it's something that companies always have to produce, because it's a standard way in which they work to cut the cubes.
Now we have 5 minutes, just more.
Okay, yeah.
Then
I'm almost.
Thank you.
I will pass the word to my colleagues in a few minutes. There are many other types of stone that can be recovered. We talk about slabs that are broken or unsold stock. Then there are cut-offs from productions, smaller and bigger. Tiles is a word. I mean, they have tons and tons of tiles. We work with the companies that have very, very high standards, because they export a lot of products in Saudi Arabia, and so they have to pick materials that have really small notch on the tile, for example, and they have to select it, and they store them and for years. So there are huge possibilities on this field. Stone masonry, obviously, it was work that companies were doing many years ago, and they still have these materials in their facilities sometimes. So, and other unique pieces they produce, for example, very specific jobs, sometimes for artists or other jobs, and then they don't sell it, for example, or they get broken, so they have to produce more, and so you have also unique pieces that can be used in very particular matter. Okay, so what we decided to do with all these materials, I will pass the word to my colleague Ines that will explain.
Okay, so now really briefly, what did we do and what are we doing now as a project? Basically, we started to ideate a solution to try to make these materials useful again. So the first solution would imply to map suppliers, to collect the materials ourselves, to store them, inventory them, and then sell them and deliver to the final clients. However, when we started to design this map, we understood that a lot of travels by vans would have to be made, and a lot of investment was needed. And we should have to centralize all the materials in the same place. So the final solution just removed the intermediary steps of the process, and we just decided to create a digital platform, so that this way we just had to go once to the industries, that it's our suppliers, so to map them, to go there, make the inventory, take photos, measurements, and other infos that would be needed, put them on this digital platform, accessible to everyone, and then only after the sale was made, to take them from the industry and deliver them directly to the clients. So as you can see, the network would be much simpler this way. So we just started to develop the platform, and this was the initial idea of the project. It was just to have the platform, and we divided it in 2 different spaces. What we call materioteca, that it's material library, basically, where we put this inventory that we do, and we are the only managers here. But then, because we didn't want us to be the only responsibles, and since we are just with 3 materials now, we also create the community part, that it's an open source tool for everyone to make announcements about materials that they are needing at the moment. So it's working on the opposite side of all the second-hand websites of products. Here are the ones that make the request, and not the ones that have materials that put everything there. This is how it looks, the Materiateca, but I will show you in a minute, and the community. And then, in parallel, what started to happen is that the people requested us additional services. So we built also a professional network of creatives, architects, designers, etc., transportation companies and manufacturer industries to develop different projects. So right now we are doing the materials inventorying and cataloging for industries, upcycling design consultancy for privates or organizations, project management and art direction in the case of cultural projects with museums and other organizations similar to them. And then also educational programs in schools or other educational contexts where we give lectures of upcycling design, systemic thinking, etc. And in the end, the ones that are benefiting are creatives that want to work more in this field, singular individuals that have renovation projects, indoor or outdoor, and other organizations with this kind of projects too. And on the other hand, the suppliers. So they can have this way the industries and the warehouses or entities with blocked material, and these benefits for the first group, it's of course access to more sustainable and unique quality materials, and in some cases at a lower price. It doesn't mean that it's always like this, but it happens. The usage and design facilitation, because we help in that process and we advise everyone, creatives or singular individuals, which are the best materials to use in each case. And of course, this is a time-saving process for the ones that are directly working with the final clients. And in this case, industries can have their stock monitoring and reevaluated and sold that stock. Então, muito obrigada. Eu vou só dar aqui uma corridinha rapidíssima à plataforma, só para verem. E não funciona. Portanto, acabou a apresentação. Boa!
Hello. It's great to be here. I'm very happy. Maybe some people don't know, but I born in Porto. It's like a return to my house, the city. I'm here, but my profile is different from the architects. I'm an artist. And I will try to bring a kind of a new view from this question about house. As an artist, sometimes it's difficult to explain feelings or spirituality in words. There is acknowledged that may not be scientific, but more confusion or silence. This suspicion to some people is scary. Living in this in-between space of scary is maybe what it means to be one artist. A place and no place, comfortable and uncomfortable. In this is probably the place where we can find the creative process. Always we look for the creative process that is complex. We see a mix of emotions. We have more doubts than answers, and that some doubts make us search and ask questions. This is not about addressing this issue about a house. We are talking about people's lives. Houses without people are like a kind of a ghosts. And it's the people who make sense the life. We don't just live in the space of the house. We are integral parts of their ecosystem. Many times I make drawings, drawings that put me to think about many kind of different ideas. Because the drawings always help us to think and make questions. Normally, I look the house like a very fragile model, completely manipulated, something that we can manipulate. As part of it, I think we are very vulnerable. The house is first and the body that we habited. The house is our body. That is very important to think about that. And don't forget that. That is why we have to know how to take care of our body. Sometimes in these talks, we forget that important question that is the body. And we put emphasis about the materiality of things. Where we are in this kind of conversation, where we are when we talk about fragility with the buildings and with the people. I start to make these little constructions, very fragile, used only with cardboards and paint. I try to look for the old buildings in the city, buildings who collapse. And I really always was thinking that the buildings is like a kind of a model and it's fragile. And that is related with this question about time. Right. Is there to need to continue to build more buildings? In this process of building, the place that was before is almost always ignored. Before to make a building, we have the land, we have the plants and the animals, and also the body. Then, never talked about the project that don't work. We never talk about the failed projects. We never talk about imperfections, the violence, the oppression, or even the death. We are afraid of the failing. Without a doubt, this is precisely the place that fascinates me due to the beauty of found imperfection, transitory, and incomplete buildings. The beauty of modest and simple things. The beauty of unconventional things. We need to fall to learn how to get up again. I just came from a long trip in the Latin America this summer, very intense. And in that trip, I been with this strong experience about the mega cities. Well, not the cities, like mega cities. Some countries in Latin America, like Colombia, Peru, Bolivia, and Brazil, they have these big cities that I call mega cities, that they have a population of more than 10 million of people. For example, cities like São Paulo, only in São Paulo have more people than Portugal country. And that is really, really, really scary. And then I ask again, we need to build more buildings. How we need to make new buildings. It was also this trip very beautiful to be outside of these big cities. For example, Bolivia is a country that really impressed me with the beauty of landscape. For example, to be in the Salar Uni, in the world last salt deserts, was very impressive. And when we are in these big landscapes, where we don't have any constructions and any houses, we have some kind of a sensation of freedom. And we have this connection with the land. Also, in these countries, I feel how there are cultures where they give importance to the sense of community, the mysticism, the magic, the ritual, the respect of the moon, the sun, and the plants. In some of these countries, in this August, was the month of the Pachamama, the goddess of the earth. And it was the month where the people give things to the land. And it's very interesting to think that this kind of concepts, we forget it. Right? This idea to be in this desert of salt in Bolivia was put me to think in this work that I have now in Valencia in Spain. That is a big painting on floor. When the people to be the experience need to take the shoes and walk on a painting. For me, it's very important to have this total experience on space. In this case, for example, the lights came to the floor and have this reflection in all building. And that was very, very, very intense. And for me, it's very important always the participation of the people inside of the buildings, to have this environment inside. For me, sometimes, and these days we are talking about this idea about more houses. The concept about houses is very simple, but the form is so complex. In 1970, let me see this drawing. In 1974 was the revolution in Portugal, and Portugal have this very strong migration movement. Around 500,000 people arrived in the country during 1975, part of this movement of decolonization. One of the many people who escaped from the armed conflict of Angola, independence, was my mother, pregnant of me, and she escaped because she tried to save my little sister with 2 years. The dramatic and violence outside reality contrasted with the safe house of her belly. An organic place that is alive, that breathes, cares, and protects. It is full of connections that links the maternal organism with this idea of house. The difference between indoor and outdoor space. My first house was a woman. The first house of everybody here was a woman. Was a space that is organic, that breathes, that protects, and that I really think it's a very beautiful metaphor when we talk about this idea about the first house. Because we are talking about house. What is the first house? We can talk about the caves, but we can talk about us, and we can talk about our mother. We can talk that space where everybody be in there, and that it's really important. In this drawing that I call I have these drawings that I call these nomads drawings, and these have this drawing this woman with the baby in lawn. Then In the first years of my life, I spent large part of my life living in different houses. And I remember one of these houses being a large castle, a very big castle, where I lived from 5 years. It was a place where the concept of family was related more to community. There was many children that I play with. Every birthday, like in this picture, was a moment of great happiness. It was a playground full of secret places, playing and built with what I found was the most fun. I found sticks, wood, stones, and any other elements that I could use. I learned to observe and use my hands to transform objects. I always try to find beauty in the things. I really love this idea or this capacity of children to use their imagination to create something. In the most dramatic moments, like now in Ukraine, in the subway, always if you look for the children, they play. You know? And it's so interesting to imagine that normally when we are child, the difficult moment when we are a baby is more for the parents, that they are conscient about the reality. But that idea, that innocence, this idea that you can use creativity to create something in this very adverse situation, I think it's very powerful, and this is something that we need to think when we are working in our work. In my work, I really love also the domestic objects. This is something that everybody knows. This calls the place where we daily abandon the world. It's a bed. We have the buildings, then you have the objects. I believe that domestic objects is really what makes sense when we talk about architecture. And the bed is a very important and very interesting element, because when we sleep, we abandon our body. We've been invisible. The moment of sleeping is the moment of the most vulnerable moment of the people, of the animals, right? And that is something that, for me, it's really interesting. Then I want to talk about one buildings in Spain, in the city of Valencia, in the urban areas of Paterna, several houses that people make in the caves. So it's houses where 40% of the population of Paterna been living in the 20th century. I really love this idea that could be a possibility about this question, what could be our house to live on the ground. Here, in this part we have this map that is the city on the ground, and on the top we have these elements. Then I live in Barcelona, and normally I'm very impressed with these traditional buildings, that is the castellers. In Barcelona, there's this tradition that is called I call the human towers, that the people that build these buildings with their body. Again, no woods, no stones, no, only with the body, people can make this building. And this building needs to make, only is possible to make in the public space. And that is very important to talk. What means the public space today? What means the house after this COVID? After this COVID, I think it becomes more vital, this necessity to be outside. Right? This conscience, or this idea that we need to be more connected with nature. Then my work sometimes is very processual. I want to put here this video. Let me see if this works. about one project that I did in Madrid. Let me see. Sorry. Normally, I work without plans, without models. I have the concept, and I work on space. This is the Crystal Palace in Madrid. I said to the museum that I want to make a building on this space. It's huge. I have always these big transparencies. It's like the inside and outside, it's present. Normally, the museums, when they invite to make something, always I have this very intense conversation, because how is possible to make something without plans or model? And my idea is to make something with 15 or 20 meters high, and only to use cardboard. Looks impossible. Not look sense. What I want to tell about this is this idea that these ideas that looks impossible, and all is possible if we believe that it's possible to make possible this idea. Because sometimes could have great ideas, but many times many people don't believe in this idea. And you feel, sometimes it was not so rational, you feel that it's possible to make it. And it's important to believe. And that makes a very big difference when you make it. Here, I put this video for you and show a little bit one piece in process. I don't have drawings, I don't have models. The museum are very stressful with me. They ask the architect and all the team to talk with me because they really want to do something with me, but I need to send some drawings. I explain the concept, but the museum, because they know what I'm doing, they need to trust, and I need to trust to the museum. To trust, it's really important in the process. You know? I think that makes a very big difference, because if we don't trust, something always is missing in the process when we are in this kind of conversation. And always, I like to think that my work is a kind of a big model, scale 1 by 1 on space. Was not a real space, but I came from painting, and the painting been very frustrated for me for many years. And then I started to make these little constructions with cardboard, and start to look for the models of the architects. But then I ask one question: what means the model? It's a projection of one idea. It's one possibility. If we don't like it, maybe you will say no, or we don't build this building. But I love the idea of the model. It's a projection of something. It's one possibility, and was not a real building. And this concept about the model, I put visible in these constructions. The idea is, in the model, we have this scale that you are bigger and the model small. But what happens if we can change the scale? That was my question that was in university when I was make these questions. And then I start to make first, I try to find some cardboard, because cardboard is very simple material to work. I'm very fascinated in Portugal to the old buildings and buildings who collapse. I start to really think about the fragility of the urban spaces, the fragility of our body, and the fragility of construction. I remember in Portugal some accidents in the urban constructions, but for me, was very frustrated to work with a real building. I'm not an architect. Right? I have this feeling that I want to work with space, but I'm not an architect. I don't have that academic knowledge. But I have the experience and the intuition, and I like to accumulate. I like to use my curiosity and this desire to learn. And this is the base of the animal acknowledge. That is where I want to talk here. And for me, it's so amazing to think how we can make whatever, all this technology, how these beautiful buildings are ever. But when we look for the nest of the bird, it's really impressive. Also, we don't know how a bird built that construction. And we start to make questions when we start to look the construction of the animals, the ant, the spider, how they make that things. And we can make extraordinary constructions, extraordinary things. And this idea about something that is missing in the construction of the animals, I like to bring to my work process. The site-specific projects are done without plans or models, are a kind of scale models, given the new possibilities of understanding the space, become, you know, one possibility. And here, you see, I don't know what you are thinking, then we can talk. How is possible when you look for this image to make something like this without plans? Also, I work with a team. The first question when I go to the spaces and the people, this is the first time that I meet, ask me what I want to make. I always give the same answers. I don't have any idea. I don't know. They've been so scared. So scared. And that is the idea, to be scared. But then in the process, I start to talk with these people who work with me. This came a kind of a conversation. And the beginning idea that makes a kind of impossible, people laugh, what this guy is doing. Then how, when you start to work, people start to change the attitudes. And when the people start to see that it's possible to make something that the beginning was impossible, they start to believe, and they feel part of the work. And that makes a really, really big difference. And here is really important to believe and in your idea. Then my work, I come from painting. For example, I have this work in the Hammer Museum in LA, in the entrance of the museum. I call the landscape, because my work, the concept, it's really important. And for example, in Toronto, I did this big box construction. Was huge. This museum before was a factory, and they transformed now to the contemporary museum. And I put these boxes in the floor. This looks a kind of a big city, right? The boxes is something that everybody recognizes, right? And people have this possibility, again, to be inside and walk inside of this building, or this construction, or this idea, or this possibility, or this something. But what are we talking about, right? And sometimes, also when we talk about architecture, painting, one artist, one architect, one philosopher, one whatever, today, all these concepts, it's in a little bit in that space in between. In that sense, these words like interdisciplinarity start to come, because we need to collaborate and try to make new connections, to make new answers to these very mutant and complex worlds where we live. Here, this image I did in this project in the Pinacoteca de São Paulo in Brazil. These have 15 meters of height, again without plans or models. And when I finished my projects, my drawings came after, but not before. Why that means? I remember Frank Gehry, when he started to work with this idea to take a paper, make like this, put in the table, and when this is in the table, I start to make a drawing. But how I can explain this form? I can see, but how I can explain how this paper get this form? It's almost impossible. But when we have that object on space, then we can start to make questions, then we can make draw, then we can take this and make things. What I make in some point is something like this. make the building out plans, always a very stressful process. I need to adapt to the space. I have a lot of problems. The first problem, gravity, is impossible to fly. Always I say the same. Then the walls, then the camera, the security cameras, then the loose, whatever. A lot of problems. I need to adapt the piece in the space. But it's really interesting to have this connection with the animals. I think the animals, sometimes when we look for the nest of the bird, look so fragile. But it's really so complex. It's really so strong. And this construction is adapted to the environment, right? He's for to grow up a little birds, right? And maybe to look to the animals, we can have a possible answer about the problems that we have today when we talk about houses, and how we talk about urbanism, and how we need to contextualize this complexity of the animals to what we are doing. And in this case, for me, this kind of construction is a kind of a nest in some point, the same. I adapt this construction on the space. I need to say that normally the artists, they work in the studio, and then you work in the studio. When the work is ready, if you don't like it, you can put away, and then you can send the work to the museum. In my case, we don't send the art piece, you send the artist. It's a different concept. And in the space, because I don't have plans, I need to adapt my body, my ideas, my creativity on space. But the museum needs to trust me, right? And then I start to work, and then always people start to be very, what he want to do, whatever, and then the people start to work. But I have one problem. All these pieces is really ephemeral. Not as a problem, but it's really ephemeral, because I really think we have this obsession about eternity. We are afraid to be amnesics. We are afraid to lose the memory. We are afraid to be old. We put emphasis into preserve everything. But if these pieces, it's ephemeral, and in the end of the exhibition, goes away. Sometimes also I make a performance that I could collapse my constructions before the opening, sometimes in the day of the opening, sometimes in the middle of the exhibition, and sometimes in the end. And the people ask, why someone could work so hard in something, and why he now collapse before the opening? And then we can have only the little marks. Why in the middle of the exhibition, anything looks sense? But really, this work is a kind of a metaphor of life. Born, live, grow up, and normally I don't talk too much about the death, but I like more to talk about recycling, or to talk about rebirth. And in this sense that this work is ephemeral, I have a problem, as I have a great documentation about my work. But I don't know what is that documentation. And what I'm doing, what I start to make is drawings that come before. Because I have limitations, gravity on the space, in the drawings I'm free, and I don't think my pieces finish when came the opening, but they continue to grow up when I make the drawings. In this case, we have the same installation in this collage, and the installation was in the roof and goes to the sky. The idea was not to have the same documentation as a photography. The idea is to came to a different levels. Then I feel like a nomad. Many times I say that I'm a nomad in the way I think, in my practices, in the way I work and exhibit. But in this conversation, what is a house? In this case, I've been living by kids in different houses with this connection with refugee. But then I grew up and I decided to be a nomad. And I started to travel to different countries. I live in different countries. I've been always with this situation with my bag, house of friends. I did a lot of artistic residences. And it's so funny when people many times start to ask me, what is your address? To send a letter or whatever. And always I give to these people my address. And that my permanent address was my email. Was so simple. The email is a permanent address. The address, physical address, is something that could change. The emails also will change. But I really think that we live in a different world, in a different society, right? And in this story about house, and this story that house could be a belly of a woman, and this story that the house could be connected with the animals. My house, I ask, what is my house? What is your house? I think everybody can make that. And although I like to think that my house has no doors or windows, no stairs or rooms, no tables or chairs, no walls or beds. My house is the people who I love. And in some way, what we're looking for is love. Because we don't choose the place where we're born. We don't choose the color of the skin. We don't choose where we come from. But we can choose where we go. We can fight. We can be in that journey with this idea about identity, because I think everybody have this identity inside. But in some point, these go to connected with these words that is very romantic about love. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for your presentations. These precedents and practices may represent some of the logics and knowledge systems from which we can learn and draw our inspirations. But I will pass right away the word to this audience. So I will start to ask you if you have any question.
Thank you, everyone. Pedro Ramos Pinto. I think this is perhaps a question first to Carlos. I really enjoyed your presentation, but I also found a connection to what both Barbara and Lorenzo and Inez are working on, so perhaps I will then extend the question to you. As you were speaking, I was really reminded of something. I had to look it up because I couldn't quite remember what it was. And what it was is a very old book by someone called David Pye, who was a professor of design, who talked about the workmanship of risk and contrasting that to the elimination of risk that comes from seriality, from mass production. And one of the things we've been talking a lot in the last 2 days has been the different approaches to managing our risks, managing it by increasing our process of seriality and pre-casting, et cetera, And it seems you're all presenting a very different way of approaching this. And yours seems to be that risk is central to your practice. And I wanted to ask if you could comment a little bit on that. Mm-hmm. And then by extension, when you talk to other architects on how to embrace this approach, how is that conversation about risk managed? You talked a little bit about guarantees, but that was at the end of a process. I want to know more about the beginning of the process.
Thank you. I start this conversation to say that I'm an artist. I think we can talk the difference between to be one artist or one architect. In some point, the simple difference could be the architects have it works with full of rules and the logistic things, and the artists sometimes have this gift to be free, right? I have a lot of artists that they study architecture, they've been architects, but they start to be artists. And for example, I really believe that, for example, Álvaro Siza is a very frustrated artist. He's an architect, but at some point he have that frustration that he was, really loved to be artist, and I think he started to draw, whatever. But I think it's important, not only the artists, but it's important to take risks. Many times it's difficult, because we need to be always in that platform to be safe. Sometimes we can copy. Sometimes we need to see first, for then to react, and then to make something. But to make something for the first time, to take risks, it's really needs to be brave many times. Also to confront it with this pressure, the social pressure that we have from the family, from the friends, from the teachers. Sometimes we feel things that it's difficult to explain, but you have that intuition. And to feel that intuition, and sometimes it's what make very successful, what many people make it, few people. And it's very interesting, for example, when we talk about nature, it's so interesting to understand that in the animal ecosystem, the most successful animals was not the most smart, was the animal who have the best capacity to adapt to the environment. And that adaptation is necessary to take risks, because you will make the same. Because it's what you know. To make something new, I think it's really hard. And in my work, also for the beginning, I came from painting, always I try to, because that frustration about painting, I start to break my paintings. My teachers don't understand why, but why you break the paintings? I say, I don't know. Then I start to look for the old buildings, the marks of the buildings in the city, and I start to think about the space. And then I start to work with these small constructions with cardboard, because it was very easy to build and construct it. But take risks, I think, in every kind of different disciplines and in life is what makes the difference. Because risks is connected in some point about attitude. And the attitude to be brave, to have courage, all this is what we need to learn. Sometimes we are so theoretical. Sometimes I talk about this Paniche when I've been there. Many people may not know that it's been a center from refugee people. But it's important to feel things before to talk about that. And that also is take risks, right? Because put you in a situation that makes you are in risk, but not only about what you are talking about, but also about your identity, about your ideas, about your background. And that is important to have this courage to be open. Is a kind of a Buddhist concept, the open mind, to be open, to accept the difference, to accept the complexity that what has a life. And if you accept, something connect with us, and in that reaction, something new could happen. Thank you.
Well, I would like to sound that profound, but talking just on more technical matter, what we're trying to do is actually build a tool for professional, private, and designer to have possibility to take risks, actually, because the materials that we provide are not standard, and most of the times also when we give consultancy and we talk with an architect that has a design or something, they all of them have similar ideas, and we would like to use this type of marble because it's more white and clear. We would like to use these colors. And so when we start comparing, it's like, okay, but well, okay, what we are trying to do is also to improve originalities in this kind of projects. So we offer availability of materials that are not standard and sometimes unique. Also because we think design can be unique, and if you start trying to change the way your think process is, you get to use to a think process, certain methodology of designing, and you start going the other way around. Okay, like instead of deciding all material at first, let's go to see what's available. Let's see if this works. Let's test sometimes. We most of the times we don't have even the opportunity to test and or to present exact result or to give or create renders and images that will fit reality, because the material are very diverse, and we need to find solution on the spot. And I think that's the interesting part. I think. It makes a unique process more. It makes it more fun, and it makes it more dynamic. It makes you go out of your chair and like go around and talk with people and trying to find the right solution in a more let's say sporty approach.
Risk can be very different levels. You can risk your money, you can risk your life, but what we are risking is the life of the whole planet at the moment.
I will ask if there is any other question, otherwise I'm going. Okay, so I'm going for this now. I think I won't try to see any connection or force it, but I actually see not just in your presentation, but in Carlos, this scheme where he explained the laboratorial process or approach for a better future, let's say. So somehow on that we are for sure on the same page. And there is this implicit idea here that somehow we need to slow down, right? So do this greater awareness in the impact of the construction from one side, and on the destruction of the planet that Barbara was just pointing out. So this idea of non-demolition and non-destruction is very strong and is probably the most sustainable position. So working from adaptation of the existence by existing buildings or already existing materials, let's say, how to reduce the production of a new building or materials in general in this current economic model that we all are inhabiting. This is one question. And also, somehow when Carlos was explaining his position, there was this Imani Jacqueline Brown words that immediately echoing on my mind. That she connect this idea of ecology or ecological bodies, and you are talking a lot about bodies, your body and the bodies you are shaping, let's say, and this idea, or at least their words, her words, as I understand them, they can assemble somehow integral relations between these bodies. So we can be talking, or they can be bits of matter, for example, and energy units to become human and microbes, to become pounds and planets, to become communities and worlds. So I'm really interested in all this, like, shaping of new bodies. If somehow there is a balance in between the effort that you and your team expand, let's say, and the outcome of the art, because it's easier to understand when we are talking about architecture, as you say, and as you pointed out. But is there any preoccupation about that, on the impact of that? I'm not saying I don't want to be, you know, to have this kind of. I don't want to to judge nothing, because we know what is the difference and what we want to achieve. But I really would like to understand if that is an important. So it's how to justify the new building, how to justify the new work of art. So the balance in between the effort of do a new building, to expand new materials, to use all these efforts, and then the outcome from that. So because we are talking about reuse, and then I want to ask you if that is always present on your work, but at the same time, so this is you can merge the questions.
No, one of the questions that the people ask me is, why cardboard first? Mm-hmm. Why cardboard? And another way is, what happened with all this cardboard after the exhibition? Normally the museums, I try to work and to talk with the museums to recycle it, all this cardboard. Then I think my work sometimes looks a little bit like put us in the position that well, but what this mean in the practical way? But I believe that in some points what I'm doing in some point is something very experimental, right? Not is something that needs to be something really real that we can be very precise. Then one company came, and then you can. And also we can make question that, but what that can give to the society, right, to the people. But I believe in some point, you know, in the art story, for example, the best and the great movements, Cubism, whatever, these can very important in the future for all many kinds of different disciplines. What I want to say is, it's very important to have these works that in sometimes have this essence about risks, right? Because in some point, it's a kind of investigation. So something that you don't know exactly what it is, right? Of course, I think the other side is something more practical in some points. No, it's a kind of it's something more practical. Also to be here in university about, you know, it's something that, I mean, the kind of what, outsider in some point. Everything is very, in some point, very, needs to be very precise, needs really to look sense. And in my case, in sometimes, something is missing, right? Because always our brain need to understand, right? And my work in some point is something that how I work and my ideas in some point is to make questions, right? All the time is something that I like it, because it's something that you know, when that you make questions. Sometimes I make workshop with kids, sometimes always with the museums, and it's amazing how kids react with that, how the museums. But in some times, you know, my work, because I don't want to say I'm an artist, in the practical way, is sometimes it's difficult to put in the very functional way, right? But,
I completely lost the question.
It's okay. We can recover. Let me think. So. Yeah, I was asking if how to reduce the production of new buildings, materials in this economical system that we are forced to live. So we are here saying that we are facing a climate crisis, but also a huge economical crisis and existential crisis also. So many crises, and the planet is calling. So how can we, as architects, designers, cultural manager, and an artist, so we are coming from different fields. So what should we take to, after this conference, to our home and consider and rethink about?
I think there are a lot of materials which are renewable or which are here with enormous amounts, like clay. So one way out is to use renewable materials and to build with straw and clay. And that's one way. And we have to develop, our industries have to develop ways on producing materials which consume less or produce less CO2. Then, of course, the reuse. But then also we have to think, do we really need all this? Do we really need 60 square meters per person houses, or could it be less? In the 1960s in Switzerland, each person had 40 square meters. Now we are at 60. Where is the limit? Can we go on and on and on, or do we maybe have to concentrate and do less, have transport, less flights? I don't say no flight, but less flights, less cars, less of everything. Use up less of everything, and maybe we are more happy having to take care of less items also.
And I think we also, as Carlos said, there is an interesting relationship between new and old and the ephemery. And I think it really goes in contrast sometimes, this nervous need of building new stuff and creating new stuff. But obviously, it's also, in a way, a human nature to express ourselves and create new things. We call our project Novo Novo, so it's like new. It's kind of a paradox, but actually what we're trying to do is give new life to materials that will be unused. So I think there is a strong point in trying to build a relationship that has been lost also between old and new. So trying to build up this relationship, and I think it's very visible on the projects that also Barbara design this relationship. Don't demolish and try to reuse what's available to create a new composition, something that originates between this relationship. And I think in our work is also what we are trying to do. And when I was trying to explain all the differences between the leftovers in the stone industry, it seems kind of a fetishism also, like going into really deep into the materials and their characteristics, but it's actually, I think it's very interesting to try to understand why something has been leftovers, and there is this need of standardize everything, and I think it's this mentality that is also causing this enormous amount of waste and enormous excess of carbon dioxide that we are producing in our industrial world. So I think trying to also to change the point of view toward this this relationship and this type of materials, I think that helps to improve things.
Okay, yeah, just to finish and to say something about this, I'm going to talk about, or at a personal level, not exactly as Inês, but as what I think that it's happening. And I'm not of the field, I'm not an architect, I'm from arts, and now I'm making management, but what I feel is that in each field there is an emotional laziness that it's taking care of the decisions that each person makes when working on their field. So basically here in our case today we listen Barbara saying that they had to find strategies like putting people with social vulnerability working because they didn't have to pay them because the state would give a financial support on it. Yesterday we heard Sophie saying that she's not even charging for the extra work of designing in an upcycling way. We as Novo Novo are always trying to find strategies to see how we can manage to continue with the project in an era that it's not yet prepared, and in a country that it's not yet prepared to make this or to put these techniques in the regular market. So I think that the only solution is that each person understands exactly what they like to work with, because even in the sustainable part of construction, you can decide to work only with or natural materials or renewable materials or wasted materials or whatever. So there are really different fields, and understand what are the sacrifices that we need to make to pursue that, and what are the methodologies that we can arrange and the partnerships that can make them happen. So I think that the solution itself, it's much more about thinking, analyzing, and see what we are as people available to give from our lives to the projects, and which project we think that, yeah, we would be proud in the end of our lives of making part of. So yeah, I didn't want to sound poetic or dramatic or anything. It's just super realistic again.
Thank you. So not sure if it's prepared or sensibilized for, maybe. I just to finalize, I want to use this opportunity to acknowledge this curatorial team for all this work, amazing work, and pertinent possibility to create, to engage, and talk about those topics. It's very important for all the universities that are with you. So Teresa Novaes and Luís Tavares Pereira, congratulations on this work. I want also to acknowledge the faculty and Filipa Guerreiro and Carolina and all the team. This is amazing work that you are all doing. I want to thank you for this so inspirational presentations and the generosity to share all this with us. And it was, just to finish, it was quite interesting that when Inês tried to open the website, there was this in Portuguese, but for you, for those who don't understand, it was like a web doesn't work without you. And I think it's very interesting because we could talk about technology, but we also can talk about our planet, and the planet doesn't work without us. So let's finish with that. Thank you.